Hello again, everybody. Back for another lecture. This time we're going to be looking at decolonization. Um, Everybody should be relatively happy here because we are rapidly approaching the end of our content. And there's only a unit or two left at this point. So, congratulations for making it this far. Um, so, in this unit on decolonization, we are going to attack this regionally. We will look pretty briefly at the causes of decolonization, but they mostly center around the destruction of the world wars. We'll also look at some common characteristics, but decolonization worldwide is an incredibly regional process. It happens different politically, culturally, economically, dependent upon the region of the world that you're talking about. So we're going to look at each region in more detail than we do the bigger overall picture and kind of focus on individual, local, regional stories. There is a ton of supplemental viewing out there to help give you some context and some detail on the stories and the processes of decolonization. I highly recommend quite a few of these. The one on the Sykes-Picot and Balfour Declaration will give you an excellent idea of what the continuing problems in the Middle East, specifically between Israel and its Arab neighbors, and where that comes from. I would also definitely take a look at the Faces of Africa video. It gives you an excellent introduction to Kwame Nkrumah, who is the first freely elected president of Ghana and one of the main faces of the Pan-African movement. Allende and Pinochet in Chile is another good video to watch. It'll give you a lot of significant detail in terms of the trend in Latin America towards these military dictatorships. And then I would also watch the one on the Japanese post-war miracle and how Japan recovers economically and politically after World War II, because that model is the one that Southeast Asian, there we go, finally said it, Southeast Asian countries follow in the years after decolonization. So let's start with why decolonization happens. The majority of why decolonization happens deals directly with the destruction of World War I and World War II, as well as the economic decline during the Great Depression. Because of this, Western Europe, for the most part, is exhausted. As we talked about in the last unit during the Cold War, during this time period, the balance of power globally shifts away from Western Europe and towards the United States. And along with that, the powers of Western Europe, Britain, France, Portugal, etc., do not have the manpower, they do not have the financial capability, and probably even more importantly, they don't have the cultural and moral standing to continue to try to maintain these empires around the world, especially when you consider the fact that World War II ostensibly was fought to prevent a Japanese and a German empire. So if the Allies fought the most destructive war in human history over preventing Germany and Japan from extending their control over the rest of the world, then it would be rather hypocritical of those Western European powers to then continue doing the same thing. Another thing that contributes to the fall of colonies, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and India, is the rise of a Western educated elite class. Um, like we talked about in the imperialism unit, certain members of colonial society, certain ethnicities are afforded the opportunity to receive education in Western schools. And when these Western educated colonial subjects return to their homes, they begin leading the fight for political independence. They begin building political parties and political institutions, and they are the leaders of the nationalist movements that are going to end up pushing the Western powers out of Africa and Asia. Also, part of the end of colonial dominance is the cultural exchange between colonial subjects and their European quote unquote superiors during the world wars. Millions of colonial subjects fight on behalf of the Allies, especially on behalf of the British. And during their experiences with Europeans during the world wars, not only do they gain technical and political education, but they also see Western European culture up close and personal. And the destruction of the world wars and the ugliness of racial um, prejudice and genocide during World War II really kind of tears down this curtain of enlightened superiority that Western European countries try to kind of cloak themselves in. And a lot of states, and Gandhi in India was probably one of the greatest spokesman on this behalf. A lot of states in Africa and Asia reject the idea that Western ways and Western methods are a sustainable model going forward. That although they provide great wealth and they provide great power, they are ultimately self destructive and they have to be tempered with Eastern methods and Eastern cultural influences. Not only that, but to a lesser degree, during the Cold War, communism offers a legitimate challenge to the superiority of Western democracy and Western capitalism. And it specifically appeals to many people around the world who have spent the past 2 centuries being exploited by Western democracy and Western capitalism. So here you have some photos of Mohandas Gandhi and Nehru, the two leaders of the Indian nationalist movement and the Indian National Congress. Both of them were educated in England. Both of them served as lawyers in England before returning to India. Here you also have a picture showing Ho Chi Minh, the leader of the Communist Revolution in North Vietnam, at a meeting of French socialists in Paris in the 1920s. So, again, Western education um, provides an important basis for the decolonization process. Now, what does decolonization look like around the globe? Regionally, it looks very different, but there are some similarities. For the most part, decolonization happens relatively very suddenly, with a very few exceptions. Most Western European colonies gain independence within a decade or two after the end of World War II. Now, obviously, 10 to 20 years doesn't sound like a very short time, but when you put it in the context of 200 years of colonization, it does happen incredibly quickly. Now, because of that relative suddenness, one thing that is pretty common in decolonization is the fact that the former colonies are, for the most part, pretty unstable politically after decolonization. Now, most of the Western European states, as they retreat from their colonies, they instill democratic institutions modeled after their own. However, democratic institutions are incredibly complex with many moving parts. And what you have in most colonial societies is a majority of the populace which has no experience with governance. They have very little experience or limited experience with running a large scale, massive bureaucracy like one would need in a Western style democracy. They also have incredibly low rates of education and literacy in these colonies, which again is a serious impediment to having a democratic style government. Also, in most of these colonies, the economic situation is incredibly weak. Centuries of exploitation at the hands of Western Europe and the Americas have left most of these economies with very little manufacturing base, very little of their own domestic production. So they, even up until contemporary times, rely mainly on a primary export economy where they send their raw materials out to more developed countries, and then purchase finished goods in return. Another pretty common aspect of decolonization, especially in the 20 to 30 years after World War II, is rapid regime change. Governments, because of their instability and because of the inability of the former colonial population to effectively govern Western style democracy, governments rise and fall. Um, in particular, military style dictatorships become rather common. And this leads to widespread corruption, authoritarian states. It allows for what we call cronyism, which is the kind of nepotism where authoritarian dictatorships replace experienced bureaucrats with friends, family, political allies, which then only furthers the corruption within the government and anti-government sentiment. Probably the most common characteristic of decolonization is the cultural, the religious, and the ethnic violence in the years after World War II. Um, because colonial boundaries are drawn and redrawn repeatedly by Western European powers with little or no input from the actual people living in those areas. Oftentimes, what you see, and this is especially prevalent in sub Saharan Africa, are ethnicities, nationalities, groups that do not like or get along with one another, who are now forcibly having to work and live together under one colonial rule. And once that colonial rule is removed in the 1950s and the 1960s, all of that simmering ethnic tension, all of the dislike, the mistrust, the anger built up of 200 years of colonial rule is now free to burst out into the open. And you see this, pretty much in every region after decolonization.